Hi everyone, welcome to my studio space. I'm going to show you a little bit around today, but then I'm going to go over how to set up a home studio for yourself that is feasible for this time that you guys are going to be working at home, okay? So this is my studio and it's attached to my garage. You can see this is the space itself. It's a very small space. It's only 12 by 15 and that's really all I need. I have enough storage for, projects, like there's my box project here, and then this is what my actual artwork kind of looks like sometimes. I have my own sink, and I'll talk a little bit about how to use your sinks today. And I have different benches and workspaces. These are my molds. You can see my little molds. And what I do with my molds is I actually create these kind of grotesque pieces where all the molds are kind of melting together. So I'm going to show you my studio workbench. This is basically a fancy table, right? It just looks like a wooden table that you would find. I think I got this at a thrift store for $10.99. And I just modified it a little bit, but you want a sturdy work surface. If you can see here, when I push on the table, it doesn't budge very much. A desk will work. You can do a lot of your work at your desk. You can do a lot of your work on a fold-out table, or really any little corner flat surface that you can find. So a couple things with your supplies is you don't want to actually work on the tabletop because your tabletops, you want to protect them. So you can use newspaper, and if I take some clay here, you can see I can wedge the clay right on top of the newspaper. Okay, so newspaper works fine. A piece of cardboard would work okay as well. Even better would be a piece of like painter's drop cloth. So this is a canvas fabric, and I can stretch this across my table. Same thing, I can work my clay onto the canvas. And you can see it doesn't stick at all. If you're working on a plastic table, if you end up with just a plastic folding table, something along those lines, the clay will stick really badly to the plastic. But all you have to do is line it with something like this. And worst comes to worst, if you can't find yourself a piece of canvas, don't run off to Home Depot to buy something like that. We're all sheltering in place right now. You can just use an old pillowcase. That's all this is. Okay, so I'm going to take my old pillowcase, and I could lay it down and work on it this way if I wanted to, or you can take a piece of wood. This is just a piece of scrap wood that I had laying around in my garage. And I'm going to open my pillowcase and slide the wood inside my pillowcase, making my own little wedge table. So now I can take my clay and wedge it right on top of that pillowcase. It's not as easy to work with as it is at school, where you have those big plaster tables to wedge at. But this is totally fine. You can totally do this at home, okay? So what you want to do is you want to make sure that whatever work surface that you choose, that you protect the work surface, because if you're not going to be making a lot of clay projects after this class, you don't necessarily want to inundate a nice table with a bunch of clay dust. But any workbench would work fine. They're super easy to clean. Use the fabrics or the newspaper even to protect that surface. A couple other things that you have are your tools. Now you guys have your toolkit, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the surface. When you have your clay pieces and you're using a needle tool and you cut, know that it's going to make marks on the fabric. So if this is a really nice pillowcase, you don't want to use that. Your mom or your grandma or somebody's going to be mad at you. Same thing with the table. If you put it down on the table and you cut across the table, it's going to leave a mark right on the table. So keep that in mind. The tools that you're using, you want to make sure that you are using them properly and you don't damage any surfaces. Other tools that you have is you guys should have your yellow sponge. You should also have your potter's toolkit. with different tools that you need. And then this is something that we have in the classroom. This is a paddle. And when you're making your big vessels, you can use it to paddle the surface to make sure you're kind of keeping the shape. You don't have one of these at home, but you might have a wooden spoon. And if your parents are anything like my parents, they used to run around the house trying to hit you with these things. Well, this is great for paddling clay. So you can paddle the pieces using a wooden spoon instead of using the big paddles that we have at school. And then if you have a water bottle, that's great. If you don't have a water bottle, you can just use your hands and flick water onto your surfaces if you have to, okay? Couple things about how you're going to store your work. Here I have my piece, and I have a couple options for you. So one option is a big Tupperware container. And you can see inside the Tupperware container, I put my bag of clay because I want my bag of clay to stay nice and moist. I'm going to spray water on the surface, and I'm going to take my wrapped project and I'm going to put it inside. And this is going to work as a damp room. Be wary of putting any wooden surfaces inside because you'll end up with a moldy wood surface. So keep that in mind for your tools. Cover that up. And I can store this for a couple days and not worry about it drying out. You do want to occasionally check on your work because, believe it or not, it's going to start warming up soon and things dry out a lot faster when there's no rain in the forecast. If you don't have one of these big Tupperware containers, you can use a box. You can see I lined the box with plastic. And what I'm going to do is, I can't really fit my clay in there, but I can fit my project. I'm going to spray it with water. I'm going to take my project. My project's already wrapped in plastic. And this is just a layer of water between the two plastics. I'm going to wrap this up really good. And just so it's safe keeping, I'm going to close up my box. And I'm going to let my friends and family know, whoever I live with, I'm going to let them know that this is my clay project. I don't want somebody to pick it up and move it around and jostle it around and have some tender pieces break on me. So communicate with the people that you share your home space with so that they know what you're doing and they know that the clay can be fragile, okay? So next we're going to talk about cleanup. I know you have to do cleanup at home too. I have to make you guys do it in the studio, and now I'm going to make you do it at home. So let's look at what I have for cleanup. I have this little old food container. I don't have anything fancy. This is an old food container that I filled with water. Now I have just a little bit of clay dust on my hands. I don't want to wash this down my sink. And even in my home studio where I have a clay sink, I'm very protective of that clay sink. Sinks and clay don't mix because clay will settle in your pipes and cause blockages and backups. So you want to wash your hands. In your sink, in your bucket of water. And any tools that you use, you want to clean your tools off as well in your bucket of water, okay? And if it makes sense to do this outside, like have a bucket of water outside, do it that way. I'm going to take a little water, and I'm going to make sure I clean up all my work surface really well. But my work surface includes the floor. So I'm going to clean the floor underneath me, especially if your studio space is inside your house. So wipe this up really well. If you are working on carpet, maybe you don't have a space outside to work on and you have to do this in your home, that's fine. What I highly recommend is putting down an old sheet or even an old towel that you can then take outside and shake it out. So take it outside the house and shake it out there instead, because you can't use a sponge on your carpet. So once you're done with this water does not get dumped down your sink. This goes into your planters, this goes out on the street, it goes to water a tree, something along those lines. You don't want this to end up in the pipes, because the whole purpose of using a bucket to clean up is that you don't want any of that stuff to go down the pipes. All your work clothes, you should also take them outside and shake them off liberally in the backyard. And then if your shoes, if you're tracking in a lot of dust between your home and wherever your workspace is, you want to kind of keep your shoes clean as well, because you don't want to track that stuff into your home. That about covers it. I mean, this is pretty simple to set up. Let me know if you guys have